Hello, viewers. It's Josie. Welcome back to Eclectic Movie Reviews and Updates. And given that the Oscar nominations are Tuesday, I decided to do a video where I discuss some of the movies that may or may not be contending in some categories. Uh, so I'm going to start off with The Boy and the Heron, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. Now, a lot has already been said about the gorgeous animation and Joe Hisaishi's amazingly transportive score, which 1000% deserves to be nominated for original score. Uh, I have always been fascinated by movies about the afterlife, and this is no exception. Um, the fantastical world that Mahito enters, I do not necessarily think could be reduced to be described as the afterlife. It's a place that transcends time, space, and logic. The term dream logic has been thrown around when discussing the plot of this film, and the intersection between Mahito's day-to-day life and the fantastical world he adventures into is Hayao Miyazaki's way of presenting the idea that what occurs in our waking day originates from our dream world creations. And I think this concept is exemplified through the grand uncle character, who's essentially the god of this fantasy world. Beyond that, Mahito's hero's journey arc and the character of grand uncle illustrate how the 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 power of creation, when used from the foundation of fear, causes destruction, whereas power with loving intentions creates harmony. And if there were an Oscar for voice work or motion capture performance, Robert Pattinson should win in a cakewalk. The entire English dub cast is one of the best casts of the year. I mean, you got Christian Bale voicing the dad, who, it's funny, he sort of does like a Brooklyn accent, even though obviously it's Japan. Um, Robert Pattinson, as I said, Gemma Chan, Dave Bautista is the Parrot King, um, Willem Dafoe has a short bit. Florence Pugh and Karen Fukuhara from The Boys. Uh, and Mark Hamill. Uh, as far as movies that could pair well with The Boy and the Heron, The Land Before Time, because it's an adventure story that touches on grief and overcoming obstacles. Uh, The King and the Mockingbird, an animated movie I talked about a long time ago on this channel. Little Prince and the Eight-Headed Dragon, Taro the Dragon Boy, two movies I also brought up on this channel. Also, I it also made me think of the Page Master a little bit. Now, I'm going to read the back of this Blu-ray. When young Richard Tyler, Macaulay Culkin, takes shelter in an empty library, he comes face to face with the world's most fearsome literary legends. Mighty and Moby Dick, treacherous Treasure Island pirates, and even a fire-breathing dragon. Richard must conquer his greatest fears or he'll never get back home. Co-starring Christopher Lloyd and featuring all-star voice casts, and this entertaining family adventure will inspire your imagination. It also has voice work from Whoopi Goldberg, Patrick Stewart, Leonard Nimoy, and Frank Welker. And, and Begley Jr. and Mel Harris. And beautiful score by James Horner, by the way. And then the last little puzzle piece I want to mention here is Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland from 1989. This is based off of a comic book of the same name by Winsor McCay. Every night, our titular boy Nemo enters into a fantastical world called Slumberland. He makes friends with a flying squirrel named Icarus and Princess Camille, and he's mentored by King Morpheus and Professor Genius. Nemo has to go up against the Nightmare King, and then his friends help him. And it's a lot of fun. You should check it out. Oh, and one more thing I want to say about The Boy and the Heron. As I said, Dave Bautista is the Parrot King, and when I saw the parrots, I was like joking to myself, wasting away again in Miyazakiville, like Margaritaville. Next up, May-December. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is sort of loosely inspired, though not completely, by the Mary Kay Letourneau case, which was a woman. She had an affair with a student, and 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 then she got pregnant with his child, and then they after like her time in prison, they got married and raised children together, and so that happens in this film. Although in this film, I think instead of it being a teacher, it's a pet store. Now, and so then Natalie Portman is going to star in a movie based off of such a event, true crime event, and she goes to study Julianne Moore and Charles Melton, who is the big age gap couple who got married and raised their kids together, and so she goes to study them, to prepare for the role. And going into this movie, I was expecting big blow up fights between our main trio, and truthfully, the lack of massively loud moments only makes the film all the more unsettling. The movie is not only about the performances in film and television, but in our day to day lives. Each member of our trio, Elizabeth, Natalie Portman, Gracie, Julianne Moore, and Joe, played by Charles Melton, present false personas. Julianne Moore tries to get involved in the community by baking cakes and goodies so she can prove that she is not some pedophilic sex offender. And it's so funny in one scene when this one family decides not to buy her cakes anymore, and she's like crying about it. It's like, they stop buying her cakes from us. And then Natalie Portman claims that her intention is to understand Gracie, Joe, and their family on an empathetic level, when really all she cares about is putting on a grand prestige performance. And Charles Melton's character, Joe, acts like he's a dad who has it all together, when really he's hurting inside. His adolescence was robbed away from him as he had to care for a sick woman in a relationship essentially built upon gaslighting. And seeing his daughter graduate reminds him of a fun adolescence he could have experienced instead and didn't have the time to have. And seeing where he smokes pot the first time with his son and cries is both humorous and devastating at the same time for that reason. And now, I think he feels both entrapment and even regret for throwing a whole chunk of his life away to be with a mentally ill woman. This is not to say that he doesn't love his children. I think he really does. And what's interesting here is that even Joe and Gracie's kids know that Gracie's mentally ill. I think what can be learned from Joe's character arc is to, embrace our youth, no matter how old we are, enjoy the time we have. And, May December was in the comedy or musical category at the Golden Globes. And to me, this movie's a tragedy. And essentially because of Charles Melton's character arc. I hope he can get nominated for supporting actor because it's a really great performance, I think. And and I like it when a screenplay can reveal like what like well, that's a testament to the performances too. Like what the inner activity, inner mind of the characters without revealing it through explicit dialogue, what's explicitly stated through dialogue. Now, May December also harshly critiques Hollywood and the media's hunger for exploiting trauma into hot stories. Elizabeth glosses over the fact that Joe's a human being dealing with inner turmoil and treats him like a cheap commodity without feelings. Now, another film this year that uh, that also kind of touched upon the media's the sensationalization of stories like this to an extent is Anatomy of a Fall, because when Sandra Hüller is preparing for the trial, thinks it's some stay in the dialogue what what's a more interesting story? A woman's husband dies by accident or a woman kills her husband? And I just figured like I'd bring up how like, the uh movies of this year speak to each other. And also don't forget Killers of the Flower Moon, with the with how that also touches upon how history um is true crime stories are exploited as well to an to an extent. Next up, Godzilla minus one. Now, this is one of the best blockbusters I have ever seen in the past couple of years. It certainly blows some recent American ones out of the water that Godzilla is lurking in. And when Godzilla was first created in Japan, the story was meant to be an allegory for the environmental destruction caused by war. The legendary MonsterVerse Godzilla films, from my understanding, because I never really watched them, tried making him as one of those misunderstood antiheroes so that they can establish a cinematic universe. Now, this film returns to the former idea. Going into it, I heard people say that it was emotional, yet I was still surprised about how emotional and moving it actually was. Our protagonist, Koichi Shikishima, is grappling with post-war survivor's guilt. This takes place post-World War II. Koichi befriends and falls in love with a woman named Noriko, who just adopted an orphan baby, and they become a chosen family. And seeing them bond together, I was like asking myself, am I watching a Hirokazu Koreeda film? Because chosen family is often a theme of his movies. And I also thought of Tokyo Godfathers. And Noriko helps ground Koichi and cope with his grief and survivor's guilt. In addition to the war, Godzilla monster here is also symbolic of that. And yes, this movie has epic nail-biting action and groundbreaking visual effects on a relatively small budget, mind you. Take notes, Hollywood. You don't have to spend $200 million plus dollars to make a superb movie. And like beyond that, the driving force that makes this movie fantastic is the writing of the characters and the performances by the actors. Without that, you would not care about what happens in the movie. And yeah, I really hope this gets nominated for visual effects. If it doesn't, I'll be really pissed. And also, uh, you know, it's it it's really great how well this movie did at the box office. And yeah, it showed, and at the end, you just want to cheer. It's incredible. And then finally, I'm going to talk About Poor Things. The latest film from Yorgos Lanthimos, screenplay by Tony McNamara. Based on a novel by Alistair Gray. On paper, this movie sounds unpleasantly sick. A dead woman who was pregnant is brought back to life, and then they take the brain of her unborn fetus to put it into her. Yeah, I know that sounds completely sick, and I understand people getting turned off by the concept and the content that they show in the film. However, at its core, it is a sweet and inspiring coming of age hero's journey about a woman taking back control of her life and achieving self actualization. Emma Stone is outstanding. She is 100% deserving of accolades. I would not mind at all seeing her win a second Oscar. I really wouldn't mind seeing her, Sandra Hüller, or Lily Gladstone win. I think all three give amazing performances. And many have cited this as being a feminist fairy tale, which it certainly is, but even more so, I see Poor Things as a surrealist, magical realist allegory of the autism experience. Although Bella Baxter was not written with the intention to be autistic, I, along with other autistic people, I've seen a lot of like people on Twitter and and Reddit and um, social sites talk about how much people on the spectrum talk about how much they relate to Bella. And a common thing among especially higher functioning autistic individuals like myself, is noticing that you feel younger than your chronological age. And Bella Baxter has a baby's brain, as I said, and this parallels the disconnect between chronological age and mental slash socio-emotional age that a lot of us have uh, have felt. And I want to read a little bit through some Reddit threads, some pieces of Reddit threads that discuss this. I read one about autistic coding and Poor Things. I saw Poor Things last Sunday with my autistic girlfriend. About 15 minutes into the movie, I noticed she was crying quite heavily. After asking her what was wrong, she explained that because the Bella character was so obviously autistically coded, the fact that aspects of her neurodivergence were being played for big laughs amongst a mostly full theater made her feel marginalized and misrepresented. We have watched several Yorgos Lanthimos movies together and have often agreed that his films seem to be told from a neurodivergent perspective. Dogtooth analyzes familial structure and how the individuals interact with it within it, which can be something quite difficult for autistic individuals. And societal rules and structures, uh, and other abstract structuralist categories can be difficult to understand, as it doesn't fall within literal thinking, a common symptom of autism, and that's Bella takes some things literally. Like in one scene, like Mark Ruffalo's character's like, "You disappeared." She's like, "People can't just disappear." And Lobster and the Killing of a Sacred Deer both feature flat, close to emotionless line delivery, which resembles the monotone colloquialism of a lot of autistic individuals. These films' plots, like Dogtooth, also relate to societal structures that can be difficult for autistic individuals, such as romantic relationships, intercommunication, and gender norms. My girlfriend and I have described these films as a neurodivergent film world, where everyone within the film seems to be neurodivergent. Poor Things, by contrast, features arguably the most neurodivergent character, except this time they exist within a neurotypical world. The other characters no longer have flat delivery, nor is the world observed in an objective way. Bella is almost a perfect allegory for neurodivergent. A fetus brain is planted to a woman's body, as I said. Now, while I did not feel marginalized watching the film, like they pointed out, I just found it to be an interesting thing to bring up. And at the beginning, our main character is viewed objectively, and her neurodivergent characteristics are played for laughs. The walk, the sexual discoveries, etc. The subjective view of the film at this point is that of her surrounding family and observers, and hence why she is seen as amusing. Once the film assumes her subjectivity, however, she's never laughed at, but laughed with. She learns about the neurotypical world and begins to mask her autistic tendencies, as real autistic people do, in an effort to conform with polite society. In summary, by the end of the film, my girlfriend found it to be one of the most greatest representations of neurodivergent. And so, and then another person wrote on Reddit, I'm grateful for the thought, like in response to this. I'm a doctor with dual qualification in the clinical use of film. My professional opinion is autists are severely compromised by society. They have statistically far higher rates of being victims of sexual and physical abuse, rape, hate crime, mate crime, bullying, and neglect. They do not have equitable access to education, social enrichment, sports, and the arts. The average life expectancy of the autist in the UK is only 39. In the USA, it's 36.5 years of age. For many of these reasons, suicide is at a rate 9 times higher than that of the neurotypical population. Film is probably the most accessible art form after music. Filmmakers are intelligent, feeling, thoughtful humans. With the severe risks to autists being largely unknown to the neurotypical population, it's important that just as some films educate about issues such as racism, the same is done for ableism. When The Matrix was revealed as an allegory for the maker's experiences of gender, it made many fans of the film, think about an issue more in depth. Whereas there's coding prevalent in sci-fi in particular, but often horror and thrillers too. We often take pause and learn about representations that are coded, or even when filmmakers, Tim Burton's good example, report that they didn't consciously code, but a community flagged it to them, and they see and are happy to talk about interviews. Anything that builds kindness as understandings of positive force and opportunity to be seized. And uh, yeah, that I just thought that would be interesting to bring up. Now, now here's a list of like ways like I noticed like uh similarities between Bella and I. Heightened okay as an autistic person. Heightened senses, the vibrant colors and fisheye lenses reflect such processing. A friend of mine pointed out that the allies that Bella makes along the way could be considered like the neurotypical allies, like her caretaker Godwin and her love Max, her best friend. Well, besides the prostitute she meets too, when she works in the brothels, also could also be considered a neurotypical ally, um, and then I listened to a video on the Mom on the Spectrum channel, and she was explaining how Bella Baxter has a natural autism in which she sees the potential for good in people and wants to see the good in people. Bella has an absolute intolerance for injustice in the world, and this woman on her channel brought up how autistic people are gripped by injustice and like can't think about anything else when it really angers them. And for instance, in the film, Bella melts down crying when she sees that poor babies in Africa are dying, and like she wants to um donate money to the poor. And not having a filter in always having a filter in social interactions. This is very clear, especially when they're in Lisbon and the cruise. And not to mention the stark and brutal honesty about the ridiculous societal conventions in polite society. And I think that's like a, a sort of a plus that comes with her filter. Um, her lack of filter, I mean. And as I sort of alluded to earlier, a sad statistic is that 9 out of 10 women on the autism spectrum face some form of sexual violence. They're taken advantage of due to their naivete and lack of sexual experience, and a big chunk of these women have experienced such trauma in childhood and or adolescence. And Mark Ruffalo's character, Duncan Wedderburn, does exactly this. He essentially preys upon Bella's innocence and special needs naivete, and I really relate to Bella's loving to learn and her loving of exploration. And we both love books. And uh, Mark Ruffalo and Willem Dafoe are fantastic and deserve Oscar nominations, but you know, Rami Youssef is not getting enough credit. He is so sweet and supportive of Bella throughout her personal growth journey, and you know, and spoiler alert, if you just fast forward a bit, he gets the girl. This movie is basically like a sex comedy where the hot girl is caught between the nerdy guy and a jerk and chooses the nerdy guy. How is that not a feel-good crowd pleaser? And if you did listen to this without seeing the film, obviously you won't say how that happens because you know it's some as Roger Ebert said, it's not um what it's not what it's about, but how it's about it. And here is a little playlist I made for Poor Things, like songs that I think connect with themes of the film. You know, I actually did a podcast with David Rosen recently for the Piecing It Together podcast. Um, the episode should be uploaded soon. We recorded it about a week ago, but it has yet to be uploaded. But I talked about movies that could connect with Poor Things, and then I also shared this playlist. Bring Me to Life by Evanescence. When Bella is reanimated, I totally like tear in my head. Can't wake up. Trippin' Billies by Dave Matthews Band with the Portuguese dance sequence. I don't know why it makes me think of that. Slide by the Goo Goo Dolls. Okay, the next couple songs are songs that describe Max's longing for Bella while she's away on her journey. Um, Black Balloon by the Goo Goo Dolls. Mr. Brightside by the Killers. I like. I totally picture like Max saying like Ram Yusuf's character being like, um, now they're going to bed and my stomach is sick. It's all in my head, but she's touching Duncan's chest now. He takes off her dress now. Let me go. The song, he is everything you want. He is everything you need. He is everything inside of you that you wish you could be. Also, Back Here by BB Mac. You know, back here, baby. She likes me for me. You know, by Blessed Union of Souls. Better Man by Pearl Jam. She dreams in color, she dreams in red. Can't find a better man. And Call Me Be Like That by Three Doors Down. You know, if I could be like that, I would give anything just to live one day. And then finally, back to Bella. Call Me When You're Sober by Evanescence. You Learn by Alanis Morissette. And finally, at the ending, Champagne Supernova by Oasis. And finally, the last thing I want to say about the last few things, well, tying back to my starting point when discussing Poor Things, something I've learned as an autistic individual is have the courage to be who you are and love yourself, and who cares what people think? Transcend the norms. Obviously, you know, there are still some rules you gotta follow, but you know what I mean. And the striving for self-advocacy. I definitely think Poor Things will get nominated for a lot of techs, you know, cinematography, production design, costumes, all deserving of that. Some people are not predicted, even though it made editing at BAFTA, it got 11 BAFTA nominations except director and supporting actor, but those two categories were juried, so I wouldn't worry too much. I hope it gets into editing, because if it gets into editing, that's a good sign of picture strength. But then again, there have been rare times where films have won Best Picture without editing. I obviously Emma Stone will be nominated, and screenplay I think is a given too. I think it should win adapted screenplay 100%. Even if you do give Oppenheimer picture and director, I would at least like to see this win adapted screenplay and a tech or two. Yeah, this is best movie I've seen this year. I It was a pleasure sharing this video with you all. If you like this video and want to see more of my videos, click the like button and subscribe. The links to my socials are in the description below. Thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.